Welcome, Viking Jarl. Or are you Carl? Or are you a queen or king? Anyway, welcome to another Valheim server video. If you've been running a dedicated server or even a hosted one, you might have been coming across some of the really common problems that everything seems to be there, but it's not working. You can't find the server, it's not showing up, and you don't know what's happening. I'm going to go through a few simple things that you can check and fix that actually I personally ran across as well, and that seems to help most people out there. I'm going to show this both on a hosted and on a local dedicated server. But let's start with the local dedicated server where it's not starting up. Often it's because your password is too short. So you're going to go to a Valheim dedicated server, you're going to do properties, we're going to go local files, and we're going to do browse. Once we're here, we need to look at the bat file they're using. So we're going to do edit. And this is where you need to make sure that you have a password. Even mentioned that has to be at least 5 characters long. If it's shorter, it might simply fail to start up and then it won't go up. So make sure you set that password. If you're in your Ping Perfect control panel, you go to the command line manager and click that. Next thing, you go to the custom and you click selected on the right side. And you'll see this is where you put in the password. You put in 1, 2, 3. No, you don't put in 1, 2, 3, 4. You put in Vedui 42, of course. No, not necessarily, but make sure it's more than 5 characters long, or at least 5. If it's 4 or less, it will fail with an error. Click apply and just start the server. A second common thing that people have problem with is that they simply can't find their server. And it's an issue with the in-game server browser because while it might have worked when there were a couple hundred or few hundred of servers, now there are thousands and thousands, and that's probably causing a lot of pressure on the server browser to just discover them all. And unfortunately, in the game, you cannot connect directly to an IP, but there are some ways around it. I'm going to show you 2 ways here. First one is that you go to your Steam, and then you go to your servers. Here's actually where you can add a server. And what you do is you type in the IP, like IP1, and then whatever port you're having, and you hit find games or just add address as favorite. Now, if you're on a dedicated one, you have to check your router IP. So this will be the router IP, and the port is usually, and you can actually go to your configuration file to check that, it's usually 2456. If you're running a dedicated, if you're a hosted one, it can be something else. If you're having problems to actually find it at the 2456, try to search at 2457 because it seems to be the +1 is the query port. So once you've added it and assuming the server is running, you just double click it and do a join game. It'll ask you for password and it'll load in the game, etc. Again, if you're having issue with actually finding it, make sure you just add on one so it says 2457 for the query port. So what if that is still a problem? Well, you can do a second way to do it as well. You do properties on your game, and when you go in here, you do +connect, and you type in the IP and the port. And this should be the correct port, not the query port. So basically, whatever the IP is of your router, if you're using a dedicator, or if it's a hosted server, whichever information that you have from your hosted server as their IP. What this does is that when you start the game, you simply exit here and you start the game, then it will basically try to connect to that host server directly. You select your character, it will ask you for password, etc., and you'll be in the game. And thirdly, if all this fails and it still will not show up and you can't add it as a favorite and you can't connect to it even as a connect option in the game, you might want to make sure that you have done your router port forwarding properly, because that's a really common issue that people have, not just with Valheim. I do a lot of 7 days to die server troubleshooting with people, and normally 95 or 99% of the time is because their port forwarding is not set up properly. Make sure you do that in your router. Put in the correct port range, put in the IP, the TCP IP, the UDP, put in the IP of your server on a local LAN, and just try and do that a few times. Look at your manual, because normally this is what fails when people are having problem with doing the port forwarding. Because if the server is up and running and no one can connect to it, well, it means that they simply can't reach through the router. Hopefully this helps you get started. And of course, if you're not running a dedicated server, these connection information can actually be useful if you're connecting to someone else's server as well. Good luck, Viking. I'll see you out there.
Special thanks to the great patrons supporting the channel. If you would like to join the vetted community and support these videos, do follow the Patreon link.